Welcome back. I want to talk briefly about backup iron sight placement on red dot sight equipped pistols. So essentially you have two options, either behind the optic or in front of the optic like we see on the chambers plate and with some other mounting systems. There really is minor benefit either way, but I think that there are some key points to consider. So the first, talking about the rear placement. This is a pretty good option for a lot of people with milling because they're only milling the pocket for the sight and they don't have to mill the dovetail for the rear sight. So it's a more economical option for the person doing the work for you, right? So I think that's kind of why we see it kind of as the primary. People also think that having more sight radius is a benefit. To that, I would say that they're backups, so it's kind of not really that big of a deal. Some downsides. We can see all this wear, all that wear on the inside of the sight. And that's from it rubbing on my body. So having this sharp edge, this corner of the rear sight up against your body is probably not ideal, but you're going to suck it up and you're going to get your abs all cut up and probably also get your shirt cut up by the outside of the sight just because it's at that highest apex. The other thing is that in that rearmost position, it kind of draws the eye to the rear sight a little bit. It's kind of like a Heine straight A configuration. And I think that, that's just not really necessary, right? I don't want to see my backup sights because they are the backups. So not the worst option, right? It's better to have this than not have any RDS at all. But I think that putting it in front has some benefits. So let's look at the G45 with the Acro. It's kind of a apples to apples comparison, being that they're both Glocks. So we see, first off, the Acro, the way this was cut by ATEI. I'm using standard height sights, so they kind of hide down there pretty good, but I can still get a co-witness. Having them in front, right, I think that they're less distracting. They also protect the front sight or the optic a little bit. So if you were to rack your pistol off of an object, maybe that backup sight would help protect the front lens of your Acro or your RMR. I usually end up using kind of like the top edge of the sight, kind of like right here, to hit the object that I'm racking the pistol off of. So not really too much benefit there. What I have seen though, that's pretty common, is once I'm done shooting my chambers gun and I'm cleaning it, if I take a white Q-tip and I rub it on the front sight or the front side of the rear sight, I'll get a lot of black stuff coming off. So that black stuff that's on the backup sight would have been on the lens. So I'm kind of keeping some of that blast, lubricant, whatever's coming off out of the chamber of that gun as it's operating off of my optic, which is pretty beneficial. Downsides, it's kind of harder to wipe your lens off, right? So I need to get in between the optic and the rear sight in order to clean it off when there is, dirt or lubricant or whatever else is on the front lens of your optic. It's easy to get in here because there's nothing obstructing it, but it's a very minor issue. So that's kind of why we see front versus rear from like a user standpoint. The other reason you'll see a front sight or rear sight in front of the optic is just some kind of milling, right? So if we look at our Acro G45, focus. Okay, see how deep the pocket, like that dovetail for the Acro gets. Now how close is that to our extractor? See the issue there? So I wanted to get this sight, this optic, as deep as it is and put it in front of the rear sight. I'd be getting pretty dangerously close to where the extractor is. Whereas with this setup, I can use a standard rear sight, a standard dovetail, and put it right above where the extractor is without any issues to the structure of the gun. We kind of see the same thing here on this chambers gun, right? If we wanted to put that sight forward, it'd be pretty close to the breech face and some other stuff like that with a pistol. So putting the optic lower almost forces you to put the rear sight in front of the optic, right? Rear sight in front of optic, kind of becoming a tongue twister, if you will. That being said, I'm not going to, sell my old Glock, right, and throw it out immediately because the rear sight is in the incorrect position. You shouldn't either. You should shoot what you got and train hard. Let me know what you guys think. If you have any questions or what else you're looking for. Thanks.